Good morning, colleagues. This is meeting number 129 of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts for Tuesday, February 26, 2019. We're here today in consideration of Report 4, Physical Security at Canada's Missions Abroad, Global Affairs Canada, of the 2018 Fall Report of the Auditor General of Canada. We're honored to have with us from the Office of the Auditor General, Mr. Jerome Bertolette, Assistant Auditor General, and Carol McCalla, Principal. Also from the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, Mr. Ian Shugart, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. With him today we have Ms. Heather Jeffrey, Assistant Deputy Minister, Consular Security and Emergency, and Mr. Dan Daniger, Assistant Deputy Minister, International Platform. And so we welcome you all here. I would just also remind members that we are televised today, so if you please would just put your phones on mute or vibrate or whatever, that will lessen the interruptions, and we will turn to Mr. Bertolette for opening statement. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, thank you for this opportunity to discuss our Fall 2018 report on physical security at Canada's missions abroad. This audit examined whether Global Affairs Canada had physical security measures in place at its missions for the effective protection of its staff and assets. Physical security measures include safeguards such as fences, vehicle barriers, or alarm systems to prevent unauthorized access or attempts to cause harm. As an employer, the department is responsible for the safety and security of its staff. More than half of the mission staff members work in dangerous locations that require protective security measures. Overall, we found that Global Affairs Canada had not kept pace with evolving security threats at its missions abroad. Over the past decade, the department received $650 million to upgrade the physical security of its higher threat missions. We found insufficient documentation to demonstrate how its physical security projects were prioritized to ensure that the most critical needs would be met. The department had identified more than 200 security measures that were urgently needed across all its missions, but it did not yet have a plan in place for their implementation. We found weaknesses in the security assessments conducted by Global Affairs Canada at its missions. For example, more than 1/3 of threat assessments were out of date, and many of the vulnerability assessments were incomplete or failed to recommend safeguards to resolve identified weaknesses. In fact, baseline security standards that specify the safeguards needed to protect missions against direct physical attack were still under development at the time of our audit. Without these standards, Global Affairs Canada cannot comprehensively assess the measures needed for the effective protection of staff and asset across its missions. Yet the department is responsible for the safety of its staff working at missions abroad, and security upgrades to its many missions are urgently needed. We examined
the security measures in place at 6 high-risk missions and found significant security deficiency at all 6. The department had known about several of these deficiencies for years, yet it had not put in place all of the recommended measures to resolve them, such as improved video surveillance, alarms, or vehicle barriers. Security officials at these missions did not know the status of the approved physical security upgrades or what interim measures were needed to mitigate the identified security risks. Most of the department's capital projects to upgrade security were at least 3 years behind schedule and were taking almost twice as long to complete as originally planned. We found that these delays were caused by weaknesses in the department's project management and oversight. For example, construction project plans did not sufficiently assess or build into the schedule the risks unique to the host country and such as the time needed to obtain permits. Other federal entities, such as Defense Construction Canada, have specialized knowledge and experience in international construction projects that could help Global Affairs Canada ensure that important security upgrades are delivered on time and on budget. Finally, we found that more than 1/3 of the staff members working in some of the most dangerous locations had not taken mandatory security awareness training. As a result, Global Affairs Canada did not have assurance that its staff members had the appropriate level of security awareness needed for their effective protection. We made 5 recommendations, and Global Affairs Canada agreed with all of them. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks. We would be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Bertolet. We'll now move to Mr. Schugert. Mr. Schugert, welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to say before giving my official remarks this morning that I'm accustomed to sitting beside the late Michael Ferguson. And through you, Chair, could I extend our sympathy to Mr. Ferguson's family, but also to his colleagues and to members of this committee who worked so closely with the late Auditor General. At Global Affairs Canada, serving Canada and Canadians abroad is our mandate. And to deliver on this mandate, we regard our responsibility for the protection of our staff, visitors, and assets at Canada's International Mission Network as our key priority. To this end, we continually review our security posture, our procedures, our systems to ensure that they're robust and effective and that they respond to the latest developments in the security context. This review process involves not only the physical security measures that have been assessed in the OAG audit, but also our operational security procedures and our security intelligence information. Collectively, these 3 security pillars work together to create layers of protection required for staff, visitors, information, and physical assets. We believe that no one pillar can be viewed in isolation. And in many contexts, specific elements, for example, deploying guards, can be strengthened to compensate and provide mitigation for another area that may not be as strong. This interlinked approach is consistent with that taken by other foreign ministries. Global Affairs Canada welcomes the Auditor General report on the physical security pillar. And as Mr. Bertolet has said, we have accepted all of the recommendations. And these recommendations are broadly aligned with those made in a recent 2018 internal audit conducted by the department under its current risk-based audit plan. The internal audit made 5 recommendations which were tabled before our Departmental Audit Committee in March of last year. We're particularly pleased that the Office of the Auditor General relied on internal audit results to inform their observations, findings, and recommendations. And as members of the committee know, that does not always happen. In particular, the Auditor General relied on the internal audit work conducted at 4 of our missions abroad, and then conducted their own independent work at 2 more missions. We appreciate the collaboration and welcome the consistency of the findings. Last year, the department began to implement the recommendations made in the internal audit and has since deepened its action in the process of implementing the Auditor General's recommendations. The action plan in response to both audits is largely being addressed through the $1.8 billion in funding, that's over a 10-year period, that the department received in the 2017 Economic Action Statement as a part of the duty of care package to improve security at missions abroad. To ensure that these investments are effectively prioritized, tracked, and implemented, Global Affairs has established a new global security framework. The framework explicitly integrates risk management principles into security policy development and decision-making, and enables risk-based priority setting and resource allocation. The framework also provides the flexibility to adapt more quickly to the changing international security environment and to address future security needs as they emerge. In addition, security assessments, which include both threat assessments and vulnerability assessments, have transitioned from a one-size-fits-all cyclical approach to a risk-based approach that prioritizes more frequent assessments of our highest risk environments. This change has also been supported by more regular and proactive communications and linkages with mission security teams on the ground. For example, part of the duty of care investments has been used to acquire and implement an enhanced security information management system that is being used to document and track security requirements by missions to ensure that they're effectively monitored and efficiently addressed. As well, in line with the audit observations related to strengthening governance and clarifying roles and responsibilities, we have strengthened, will continue to do so, our internal governance to better coordinate decision-making and enhance the consistency and effective delivery of physical security projects at our missions abroad. More specifically, decision-making for the allocation of resources to all major capital projects has been streamlined with senior-level oversight by an ADM-level committee. The committee meets monthly and includes the Departmental Security Officer as a key member, which is in line with one of the audit recommendations. The DSO's membership in the committee reflects the fact that many of our real property projects include physical security aspects. The committee is critical to ensuring strengthened project management for real property projects and for improving their timely delivery. As well, project delivery is being supported now by a recently created project management office. The office is responsible for maintaining quality assurance, the timeliness of project delivery and monitoring, and reporting on results. The AG's report also highlighted the need for the department to initiate discussions with other government departments and to adopt best practices. In this respect, we continue to learn from our federal colleagues, as well as with respected project management divisions of our foreign counterparts worldwide. These lessons will also contribute to and benefit from the Government of Canada's project management community of practice. While the new governance structure is strengthening project management oversight and best practices continue to be adopted, it is also true that physical security projects abroad are often undertaken in complex and at times unstable overseas environments, where foreign laws, policies, and other local conditions are outside our control. Events and changing circumstances can seriously impede project delivery and sometimes call for alternative mitigation. New tracking systems will monitor and flag those areas where such alternative mitigation is required. Enfin, un autre domaine couvert.
Finally, an additional area covered by the Auditor General that was not included in the scope of our internal audit relates to security training. In line with the recommendations and as part of the duty of care investment package, we have work underway to strengthen our security competencies and capabilities. The security training program has been revamped and will be broadened to improve the preparedness of departmental staff and locally engaged staff. A new mandatory security training course of 5 days has been added to the learning curriculum of staff heading to hazardous environments. Other courses have been updated to keep pace with evolving security needs. All training is designed to respond to operational needs and to mitigate risks abroad. A tracking solution has also been implemented to document and monitor training completed. In closing, Mr. Chairman, I would note that the physical security function examined in this audit comprises but one component within a broad range of measures that are employed in an integrated fashion to enhance the protection of our staff, visitors, information, and assets abroad. Additional security measures, such as security briefings, security equipment, real-time intelligence, personnel movement protocols, and guard protection, provide critical security enhancements and additional layers of mitigation. In extreme cases, where risks are elevated and/or physical security measures require enhancements that cannot be achieved, restrictive movement protocols and adjustments to mission postures are implemented to compensate, up to and including staff withdrawals and mission closure as required to ensure safety and security of all our employees. This has recently been the case, for example, in our missions in Caracas, Venezuela, and in Havana, in Cuba. Unquestionably, the safety of our employees is my foremost preoccupation. The modernization of our approach to all of the elements required to operate securely, effectively, and safely abroad is well underway, and the full implementation of the audit recommendations is being facilitated through the duty of care investments recently announced. We are already seeing the real impact of these efforts. The Auditor General's support for this direction is both valued and encouraging.
Assisted by my colleagues, Dan runs our international platform, and Heather is specifically charged with our consular program. Heather and I were before the committee recently, as well as our security operations and emergency management. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Schugert. And we'll now move to the first round of questioning, which is a 7-minute round, and we'll go to Madame Mendez.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci à vous tous.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presence today. Sorry for being late. Mr. Schugert, I'll start with the elephant in the room, because even if this is not covered by the study you spoke about, the case of Cuba is very interesting and gathers a lot of interest in the media. You just told us that we had to take out a personnel from Havana. Can you tell us more about that? The case is before the tribunal, so there may be limits to what you can share with us, but we'd like to have an idea, because this has an impact on the security of the personnel. I would appreciate if you could speak about that. Without any doubt, this is a case that concerns us greatly from several points of view. This is an example of the limits we face. There are limits because of there's laws about personal data, and as you said, the issue is before tribunals now. But what's more important is that there are limits to our knowledge of what happened. about the nature of the risks against our employees.
We are perfectly happy to answer questions in this regard, notwithstanding the limits. I can tell you that we have learned in this regard as we have proceeded. We have worked with the Cuban authorities to the maximum degree possible. We have worked with our American colleagues to learn as much as we can. And we have applied more measures to safeguard our employees in Havana, including restricting the footprint in Havana to respond to continuing concerns and incidents there. And we will continue to apply that standard of care. We don't always know where the threats are going to come from. And in this particular case, what is especially troubling is that we don't know precisely what is the source of the problem. We have provided the appropriate diagnostic testing and care. We continue to meet with the staff concerned, and those cases represent a wide variety of circumstance and of reaction within those families, our staff and their dependents. So there is no single pattern that points very clearly to a problem or the nature of the problem. And as I said, we have learned as we've gone. We know more than we did in the early days. But this is an extremely troubling situation, and we are open to whatever technical advice that we are receiving from medical personnel and from our colleagues, as well as from other agencies such as the RCMP and so on that we are working with.
So, if I may, Chair, that brings me to the question of precisely the physical security of staff in our missions, because of the very incomprehensible, if you wish, nature of the problem and what affected staff. It's almost as if there's an impossibility of ensuring complete security when you don't really know what's threatening you. What is the threat? And okay, I guess that there's still a huge investigation going on. I'm presuming that this is not stopped, but have we taken out all personnel from Cuba? Is there still staff there?
Yes, we have a reduced footprint, and we
in the same buildings.
Yes, although without going into too much detail, which I think you'll appreciate, I want to be careful. We have, as far as we know, full information about where staff have been affected physically, what locations, and we take that into account. And we have reduced the footprint to provide the core support to Canadians who visit Cuba, and as you know, that is very substantial. Canadian companies work in Cuba. So we have, in prudence, not exposed more staff, and indeed we continue to assess the nature of the exposure and do that virtually continuously with the staff in Cuba. We have all, Heather particularly, and the ADM responsible for the geographic region, been in touch with the head of mission and with the staff who have have returned.
Talking about the head of mission, what is their authority, if you wish, to change the nature of the security around the mission in instances that erupt like that?
Right. I think you're referring now more generally.
More generally, yes, yeah, absolutely.
The head of mission is effectively the CEO for Canada Corp in that location. But it is a collaborative effort between headquarters, which has to apply standard protocols and also has some objectivity of distance that can look at the data and look at the assessment and make final decisions on security posture. But on the ground, the head of mission has considerable scope, including authority with respect to other departments who are located in our missions to manage the security posture. But I think we would emphasize it's a highly collaborative thing between the mission and headquarters.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kelly, please. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you. And yes, the ongoing news on this, the Cuba episode brings this really into focus about the very real dangers and the real threats that exist in our missions. But your answers to Madam Mendez's questions about trying to quantify or try to understand threats that exist are really, I think, are going to be cold comfort for the 7,800 employees in Canada's foreign missions when we have an Auditor General's report that is full of failures to address known threats. We're not even dealing with the threats we know about, never mind new threats that are only beginning to be understood. So I bring your attention, for example, under 4.24, security measures recommended for implementation in each of the 6 missions had not been tracked or prioritized for action. For example, at one mission, the perimeter was identified in 2011 as a critical vulnerability requiring very urgent attention. During our site visit in 2018, we found that this issue had not yet been resolved. So you've identified a critical threat in 2011, and in 2018, it hasn't been addressed. This is a committee where we demand accountability for how the funds authorized by Parliament have been spent to execute the policy of the government. And we have a report full of failures to protect our own employees in foreign missions. Please explain why these failures to implement known security mitigation measures have taken place.
First, I would say that we accept all of these findings and the implications of the findings. And as I said, we found them ourselves in our own internal audit. Secondly, we make use of the resources that we have available to us at any given time, and we have to allocate those resources on the basis of current need. And in some cases, the more urgent security needs would account for the delay in identified projects or the pacing of projects. Thirdly, as I indicated, we, and as the Auditor General's Office indicated, the documentation of projects, both for tracking needs, for tracking implementation, was, as is so often the case, not there. We have now put those systems in place to track. So these cases that are described are accurate, and we have put in place, as I indicated in my comments, the measures to know exactly where we are in our projects, and to make decisions on the basis of risks as they emerge over time.
Okay. The report identified that some of your funding actually almost lapsed or had to be retained by special applications. So I don't see the Auditor General doesn't. I mean, yes, I understand that you must deal with what is allocated, but you didn't even spend what was allocated. So I don't find that an acceptable reason for not having implemented known security improvements when you have lapsing money. It's good that you have, and I will though also. I am pleased that at least your internal audit appears to match the Auditor General's. That's positive, and it contrasts with some other studies that have been before this committee. I'm going to perhaps ask the Auditor General, then ask Mr. Bertolet. You relied mostly on, you visited two sites yourself and relied on their audit. I'll maybe have you comment, Mr. Bertolet, on the congruency of the internal audit and what you found, because this is an important point if it's just not practical for you to get out and audit these physical sites in most cases.
Mr. Chair, I'll ask my colleague, Ms. McCalla, to answer that question. All right, Ms. McCalla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did rely on the audit work that was done in Global Affairs' recent internal audit on physical security. We had worked with them very closely to ensure that we could do that. In our view and in their view, this would provide the most value to Global Affairs. So they had done a series of site visits. The objective of their audit was to determine out of the past tranche of funding that Global Affairs had received to upgrade its physical security, what upgrades had indeed been done. So they had developed a test program in their various missions to identify, of the physical security measures that were on the books to be implemented, what in fact was the status of those. So we had developed with Global Affairs a similar audit approach to go out to additional sites and rely on their sites, and together we would have a much better picture with 6 sites.
I want to get back then to Mr. Shugart about how we got to this point. The Auditor General said that the department's capacity to deliver its security projects were limited. Many positions which dealt with capital projects at missions abroad were vacant, and that the department had not conducted lessons learned or studies for past failures, and that failures of project oversight and project management were identified as problems around the security shortcomings. So again, you are here to account for the department and for funds that have been allocated for it. How do you explain these kinds of failures?
Well, Chair, I think it is well known to this committee that project management has been a vulnerability across government operations for many years. And in many places, those lessons are being learned, often the very painful way. And at Global Affairs, we are learning those lessons and have put in place measures to improve project management.
I think we better leave it there. We're over now. We'll now move to Mr. Christofferson, please. We can come back to that a little bit later. Mr. Christofferson, 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good to see you again. Thank you all for being here. Again, starting with the focus of the audit. Page 2, 4.6, this audit focused on whether Global Affairs Canada met its physical security needs at missions abroad to protect its staff and assets, Overall message, the next page, 4.10, overall, Global Affairs Canada had not taken all measures needed to keep pace with evolving security threats at its missions abroad. And further in the conclusion, page 17, 4.78, we concluded that Global Affairs Canada did not fully meet its physical security needs at missions abroad to protect its staff and assets. I find this really surprising for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which is, in terms of governance, like it or not, security is a huge issue. And in your department, it's what you do. And so I was really surprised and disappointed that something so important in a department that deals with security as its major focus would have these problems with obvious stuff. This isn't like deep intelligence and the analysis is going wrong. This is like basic things. And it's really disconcerting when you think about how easily things can turn. One of the greatest examples, and it's an extreme, but it's real, was Iran in '79. I mean, going from no problem at all to suddenly a crisis that can bog down a government and a nation for years, if not decades, can happen in a blink. And these are the first lines of defense. So I just find it passing strange, and I'll just leave that there. And if you want to comment on that in some way, you can. Otherwise, I'm just going to move on to my questions. And the first one is, I'm going to pick up where you just were recently. You talked about managing projects, and there had been a vulnerability for governments for years, and we do know that. But the Auditor General makes reference on page 13, 4.63, other federal entities that deliver security projects internationally have knowledge and expertise that, in our view, could benefit Global Affairs Canada. For example, Defence Construction Canada runs construction engineering projects internationally, many with unique security requirements. It delivers most of its projects for national defense, but it also provides services to other government entities, such as the Communications Security Establishment Canada. In our 2017 special examination, we found that Defence Construction Canada did a good job of, and shout out to them, did a good job of managing construction projects and contracts. For example, it carried out contracts according to the client's requirements, and it met deadlines and budgets. So how about that? I mean, you said that there's vulnerabilities, but the Auditor General is able to point out to a major player in the development of projects that does a really good job. And boy, from what I know about security, when you're starting to talk Communications Security Establishment Canada, we're getting into some really serious stuff. So these got to be trusted folks. So why didn't you go down this road? Why did you let yourself, and if you look at the chart, the last thing I'll say, that chart on page 13, it's like, holy smokes, where were the grown-ups in the room?
Thank you, Chair. I would just say very briefly that, again, we do audits, and we put this on our risk-based internal audit plan precisely so that we would have an accurate picture of the vulnerabilities in our performance on security. I don't want, while I fully accept the conclusions that have been made in both of these audits, ours and the AG's, and we are not in any way minimizing those faults and vulnerabilities. Equally, I don't want Canadians to have the impression through our discussion this morning that no security provisions are made, no extensive work has been done. These are vulnerabilities and faults that are important that have been identified. It is not an indictment of our security posture across our mission network. I'd like Dan to comment on the defense organization and the role it could have played in the past and is now, as we have accepted the audit recommendation and work with them.
Just before we go there, and I'll give you that opportunity, I just want to comment that I wholeheartedly support your comment about the security. These are issues to be dealt with, but they do not reflect the overall. I mean, I've been to a lot of the hotspots, embassies myself. I've been very fortunate to do a fair bit of travel. On your list there, I've been to the Egyptian embassy twice. I mean, that's a hotbed, and yet the security is fantastic. Nonetheless, and if I may also say, some of us were talking too, a little concerned about what are the implications of this out in the public domain. Does that suggest to folks that they're, a free-for-all on Canadian international assets? And that's not the case at all, and I agree with you entirely. This is a maintenance check, not a need to overhaul the transmission and the engine. So I agree with you on that. Sorry, go ahead, please, sir.
And there's rust, too.
Yeah. Well, that's my next question.
Very simply on the defense construction, we accepted the recommendation from the auditing team last year, and we've already started construction roughly a year ago with defense construction to learn lessons about how they do it.
And there's a reason why you wouldn't just use them? Is that just not a practical thing for you?
It's really not their mandate nor their expertise to build missions that provide the range of international programs that we do in our missions abroad. Nevertheless, there are things that we can do together and we can learn from them, and we're taking it in a very open way.
David, we'll come back to you. We'll now move to Mr. Area, please. Mr. Area, 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before coming to this particular audit report, I would like to go back to the situation in Cuba. I understand that many unknowns there. In the court case that has been filed, there was one sentence that really bothered me. I hope it is not truth. Let me read it. The statement of claim contends that Global Affairs actively interfered with the plaintiff's attempts to receive proper health care, including going so far as instructing hospitals to stop testing and treating them. I hope it is not true.
Chair, I will defer to Heather on this point, but I would say, with respect, that I don't think this is the forum for me to respond to specific claims in the suit. I don't say that to withhold information, but it is a legal action that has been taken that the claimants are perfectly entitled to take, but I think we should respond through the appropriate venues. Is there anything that we could say in addition to that? I think we should be very careful.
I would just add that as part of the whole of government approach that we've been taking, that we have worked with a number of different medical institutions, hospitals, primary physicians, healthcare providers, including Dalhousie University, which is very involved in a research program, as well as with our international counterparts to put in place the best possible service we can for our staff.
Okay, I will just, on counsel from our clerk here, fully understanding that something that is before the courts does not have to be disclosed here. If we did that, we would go in camera, and that would be a longer process to get that. Cuba isn't mentioned in the report. We use that as an example, and this is not taking off your time either. So just make sure that we stay focused on the report. Carry on, Mr. Eric.
Thank you. My next question is to the Auditor General Office. I know this report dealt with the physical security part of it. There are two other parts of the security pillars, as Mr. Chugart mentioned. Any reasons why you didn't look at the security as a whole, and why you limited yourself to the physical infrastructure?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our audit did focus on the physical security, knowing that it indeed does work in tandem with operational security and intelligence to make up the entire security posture of a mission abroad. We focused in on physical security because Global Affairs had received substantial funding to upgrade its physical security at missions abroad. And in 2017, it received another $1.8 billion to upgrade its physical security at missions abroad. So we wanted to understand how well it had worked over the past decade to upgrade its security and what needed to be done to ensure success for the next tranche of funding. So we focused in on what was the physical security in place at its missions, and then to understand why, what improvements needed to be made for the next tranche of funding.
Having myself lived and worked in several countries, I understand the complexities involved in construction or project implementation related to the physical buildings there. And as the department has mentioned that they were aware of some of the things that was required to improve the physical infrastructure. Did you look into the alternative mitigation measures the department may have undertaken to overcome this?
In our 6 missions that we examined, we looked at what security measures had been recommended by Global Affairs security staff. So we looked at their threat and vulnerability assessments, and those examined both the physical and operational security measures. They made a number of recommendations for what needs to be put in place at the mission given the threat environment. And what we understood was in those vulnerability assessments, it did identify critical vulnerabilities, and as a result, it also identified several interim measures that needed to take place, such as additional operational security, additional guards, additional surveillance in general across its missions, and in each of the vulnerability assessments we had looked at. What we found, though, was at the missions, there was not a good understanding of what those measures needed to be. Everyone was quite clear about what the critical vulnerability was, but they weren't necessarily clear about what mitigating interim measures needed to be in place, and we did find that some of those interim measures were not in place. Some of them were, but some of them weren't, but there wasn't an understanding of why some were in place and why others weren't in place, so that there was an overall understanding of the posture of the security posture of the mission. So therefore, we recommended that that be well documented, especially in an organization like Global Affairs, where there is cyclical rotation of the staff, that staff be very clear about what's required. And these vulnerability assessments are not necessarily done every year, so that there was a good understanding across heads of mission and with the security officials within the missions as well.
Mr. Shigart, do you comment on that?
I'd be delighted to. I was wondering if I would ask the chair if I could make a comment on this. My experience as deputy minister in 3 departments now it points to a tendency, I think, across government, which I think would be of broad interest to the Public Accounts Committee, that frequently these faults that are exposed rightly in audits point to an inclination to do things rather than to plan and track and document things. And when you're dealing with finite resources, often putting in place the information systems and the documentary systems is seen or has been seen as less inherently valuable than actually spending the money on the core purpose. But when you don't do that, what we have found over and over again is that you actually pay for it, sometimes through really bad AG reports, but also in an ability to know exactly what it is that you're dealing with. The proper planning and documentation actually does help manage the risk. And I think as a general proposition, that is something that across government we have been learning painfully, and you can see how that lesson is actually driving our way forward in this particular case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schugert. We'll now move into the second round of questioning. I remind you, they're typically 5-minute rounds. Mr. Kelly.
I'm going to let Mrs. Kuzi take my time.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, and thank you, Chair. And merci tout le monde pour être ici ce matin. Ça me fait un plaisir de vous voir.
Thank you for being here this morning. It's a pleasure to see you.
Career at Global Affairs Canada for 15 years, and I served as security officer at Mission twice, so this is something that is very dear to my heart. I am encouraged by the recommendations that I see within the report and the explanation that we've had here today. But my former colleague, Madame Jeffrey, certainly knows that a lot of time when the rubber hits the road, it sort of comes down to these nuts and bolts types of things. And when I reflect back upon my time at Mission, there were generally 3 obstacles, and I wanted to address each of them briefly because they are a little bit more in the weeds, and of course give my colleagues from Foreign Affairs a chance to address each of those. So the first one is personnel. Certainly as MCOs, we were often in charge of 3-4 programs at a time. So the human resources, property, finance, and finally often we were the security officers as well. So while certainly the training encourages me, of course our colleague Madame Cameron, who served as head of mission in Lebanon, comes from I consider her a contemporary. Have we addressed the capacity situation? Have we put the numbers in place for people to effectively address these problems? That's the first thing. The second challenge I always encountered, out of fairness to the Government of Canada, the people of Canada, was procurement. So, of course, this is something that is always incredibly complex, incredibly time-consuming. Procurement processes in the Government of Canada do not happen overnight. They take a lot of time. I was there during the time of Merck's, of course, which I want to say had a $75,000 threshold. So certainly you could achieve things like installing minor alarm systems, but anything that was larger certainly required an extensive month-long process, especially when we're looking at major missions. And then the third, which Monsieur Schugart addressed briefly, was money, of course. And now, historically, this went the other way, where it was difficult to move from operations to capital to operations, rather than the other way. And it sounds as though these things have been addressed, but I wanted to put these 3 obstacles that I continuously faced as a security officer at Mission. So that's the capacity of the personnel, the procurement processes, and then finally the financing, although I am encouraged by this process you outlined, Mr. Schugart. If you could please comment on those 3 things, because when the rubber hits the road, those were the 3 obstacles I found in terms of implementing the necessities required to keep my people safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps, Chair, we could take people, procurement, money.
Excuse me, Chair, and just briefly, I will take 30 seconds at the end just for one more question briefly. So 2 minutes, a minute and a half, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. We agree. Our management consular stream is the engine room of our missions abroad. They have a large number of business lines. And in the kind of complex security environment that we're dealing with, it has been very important to supplement that capacity with dedicated readiness and security program managers. This is being facilitated through the duty of care investment. So this year alone, we have over 35 new dedicated security program managers deployed to missions abroad, fully trained. The training of those new security dedicated staff is also funded through the new duty of care investments, freeing up in our highest threat missions and also to provide regional expertise to missions in their areas. And that aspect of the readiness aspect is particularly important because, as you've pointed out, it's about the protocols, exercises, training, having the right reflexes when crises or security deterioration occurs so that we can respond. So that personnel enhancement is a big part of the new investment plan.
We have also increased our capacity in procurement in headquarters, and I don't know the time, Chair, when the honourable member was an MCO out in the field, but in recent years we've developed these common service delivery points in 7 parts around the world, That has served to strengthen our responsiveness and with respect to being able to procure in the missions, and to track it and get the headquarters assistance for those larger procurements out in the missions. We're still measuring the impact of that, though.
And it does still remain a major challenge on the money. I'll leave aside the question of whether we have enough. I have no complaints about the resources the government is currently giving us to deal with mission security. The way this works with the Treasury Board is that often these funds that are focused on particular programs are in special purpose allotments. We can only draw them down for those specific purposes. And on an earlier question raised by Mr. Kelly, sometimes what happens is that based on the speed with which a project is being implemented, if we can document that, we can go to the Treasury Board and ask for reprofiling of funds so that they are not lost even though they are spent in a subsequent fiscal year. Our objective, of course, is through project management and improved governance to be spending more and more of the money allocated for a year in that year, and we're making progress in that regard.
I think just in response to, and we're going to go to Mr. Sarai next, but what Mr. Kelly was referring to was 4.59 in the report that said timeliness of physical security projects of the $652 million in funding provided to Global Affairs Canada over the past decade to upgrade physical security at missions. About $425 million was slated for capital projects. Although these projects were to be completed within 10 years by 2017, about 1/4 of the funding, $103 million, had not been spent. The department had to obtain special permission to retain $82 million of the $103 million in order to complete the security projects. And then later they went and asked for more money when that money hadn't been spent. So I think that was where the committee was kind of questioning the fund allocations of funds. But we'll move to Mr. Sarai. And if there's something in there you want to refer to later, you can. Mr. Sarai, please.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is, you audited the upgrades to security, and in almost all of the cases, they were at least 3 years behind schedule. They're taking almost twice as long to complete as originally planned. Who does the original assessment of the timeline? Is it your contractor? Is your internal assessment? Do you use Defense Construction Canada in that regards? Because I find it alarming that if it's a pattern, that every single time it's twice as long and at least 3 years behind.
Well, our goal, Chair, is that you won't read that in future reports of the Auditor General because of improvements in our planning capacity. Those would have been, as all our projects, working with our contractors in the implementation, but they would be planned internally, often in consultation with other departments, but depending on the particular project. But that planning would typically be internal and expert-based capacity within the department, and that is what we are seeking to.
And then is
improve.
It contracted out to contractors in that territory, or is it Canadian contractors that go out and do that work?
I'll let Dan expand on that.
Yeah, we use a combination of contractors, but typically we would use local contractors, and most projects go out to tender. So we would evaluate bidders based on their competencies and price and those sorts of things. So typically it's local construction companies.
And have you thought of using a government-based, somebody like Defense Construction Canada that would be kind of know the operations, know the security parameters, and be able to do this on a maybe more timely and perhaps even cost-effective manner, or has that not worked in the past?
What we're learning from defense construction is some of their practices in project management. They're not a construction company per se with an international reach. And we do use a combination of really qualified local contractors, really good ones. Depends on the size of a project. You can have a project that's 10, 20, 30 million and a project that's 2 million in different scopes.
You also spoke about a risk-based approach versus a one-size-fits-all. How would you do this? Do you use internal assessors or outside assessors? Is it global affairs or foreign affairs? Is it defense? Is it the RCMP or private? Who will determine the risk-based approach versus in these situations?
The main change here is to move from a planning approach that would see projects being renewed on a cyclical basis. To take the analogy of the car, replacing the car every 5 years, for example. The approach that we're taking is more based on a recognition that the world doesn't actually work that way, and in some cases, with respect to the life cycle of facilities, a cyclical approach might be right, but for security, a risk-based approach. So you might have to replace that car every 2 years if the security environment is changing. If it is not, you might not have to replace that car for 10 years. So, but the planning is done internally, and we would be comparing notes with other like-minded countries in the various locations, as well as others like DND and RCMP and so on, to gather all of the relevant inputs for planning. And we have expertise within the department, under the departmental security officer and in the branches who understand that risk environment, and we get the information from the missions. It's a fairly elaborate process, but it's now risk-based rather than just routine turnover.
And you are taking into account the comments and suggestions by the staff that are working in those
Absolutely.
environments.
Absolutely.
Lastly, do you believe the new funding commitments will help ensure these problems will be less frequent in the future?
I absolutely do, and the resources, as we've indicated, cover not just the physical circumstances, the physical capacity, but also the training that we are giving to our staff when they go out, documented, tracked with information systems, as well as the operational measures that we put in place. So expenditure on guards or relatively inexpensive equipment like closed circuit TV can be medium-term risk mitigation rather than a major reconstruction project. We're very confident that we're on the right track.
Thank you, Mr. Sarai and Mr. Schugert. We'll now move back to Mr. Kelly, please.
Thank you. I want to turn to a common thread that has come up throughout the Auditor General's reports that we've received at committee, and that is around problems of data collection, data retention, being able to respond or react to data. Much has been made of evidence-based policy making, but there is no evidence-based policy making without evidence. And I bring to your attention, Mr. Schugert, the report 4.12, security assessments were missing and incomplete. Global Affairs Canada did not have the information it needed to prioritize investments. 424 again, had not tracked or prioritized for action. We've got rationale behind funding decisions was not 4.44. Rationale behind funding decisions was not properly documented to ensure the most urgent security needs would be met. It's throughout the report failings to respond to or failings to even have the information with which to make proper decisions. How was that allowed to happen?
this typically, and in this case, doesn't arise through conscious decision. I think it happens because of a practical focus sometimes on moving resources out when the proper planning and documentation systems aren't in place. They're not used, and it does take a conscious investment to put those systems in place, and that is what we are now doing. But as I said earlier, I think this is a broad problem. But during the period of those funding programs, one of the missions that had enormous security requirements, of course, was Kabul in Afghanistan, and the needs there were obvious. They were patent, and so in the absence of a documentary system that would hold you to a plan, sometimes the urgent needs act like a big magnet, and so resources are put where the practical day-to-day assessment is needed. What we're doing now is not being blind to the circumstances as they evolve, but having in place the systems that will track what we're doing. Are we on schedule? How have the needs changed? Evergreening those risk assessments so that we will not have this kind of finding in the future. You're absolutely right. But what we've done is put in place the systems that will prevent that reoccurring.
Yeah, and we can't have that. We can't have a scenario like we've seen in others where we come back 5 or 10 years from now with another audit that with the same failures. And having had this audit tabled in the public domain places particular urgency on getting this together and getting these known security lapses addressed as soon as possible. I know that my colleague, Mrs. Kuzi, had one quick question that she wanted to ask and didn't have time, so I'll let her do that right now. We've got about a minute left.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Chair. I just want to state really, as a former Foreign Service officer abroad, that I feel the government truly has the deepest obligation to keep its employees safe abroad. And I know there has been a lot of discussion this morning in regards to the situation in Havana, but what is apparent to me through the media is that Canadians serving there did not feel safe and did not feel that the present government did protect them as soon as they should have, especially comparative to the government of the United States, which included political comments from the United States government and none from our government. But what have we learned from this? I want to give you the opportunity as representatives for Global Affairs Canada here today to say, what have we learned from this, from reacting to this so slowly, so that we never put our people in harm's way like this again? And should something like this occur, how do we respond sooner, recognize it sooner, to stem this problem as quickly as possible?
Very quickly.
I'm not at this point in my comment going to accept all of the assertion. I would say that I think it is too soon for us to have learned all the lessons because we don't know a great deal still of what it is we're dealing with. The test is always based on what you are finding. First, are you taking it absolutely seriously? And secondly, are you applying a reasonable standard of care given all of the circumstances, including the need to continue to serve Canadians in the field? Are the actions that you take meeting the reasonableness test in the legal understanding of duty of care? And that is what we are striving to do.
Susie, we'll now move to Ms. Yip, please.
Thank you for coming. I'm concerned about the security training for staff. 2 in 5 employees at high threat Canadian missions had not taken either the personal security seminar or the hazardous environment training, or both. And GAC had not routinely provided an enhanced security awareness training at high threat missions. Why are Canadian staff members posted to missions operating in high threat environments not given the training and the seminar before their departure?
Well, I don't want to quibble, but I would say that the tense is important. It is a absolutely valid question. Why were staff not given the appropriate training? But it wouldn't be accurate anymore to say why are staff not being given the adequate training, because this is something that we have worked very hard to correct, and I'd invite Heather to elaborate a little bit on our training program.
Yes, we have a number of specialized course offerings for high-threat missions, the hostile environment training and the personal security seminars, which are multi-day, very specialized, very well-regarded courses. The issue that we had faced in the past was that while people were being trained going out to mission from headquarters, it was very difficult for operational reasons for us to train people moving between missions abroad, which is frequently the case with our rotational staff. Under our new duty of care investment program, training offerings have been prioritized. We've increased the quantity of those offerings by 40% this year. We've also piloted new types of new ways of offering these courses. For example, they can now be offered abroad in environments rather than bringing people back here. We're able to offer the courses on site in the local environment, which also enhances the training. And so we're well on track to implementing that recommendation. Another aspect of the recommendation was, of course, the ability to track this, and our new security information management system and a dedicated training tracker are already in place and functioning to make sure that we have adequate oversight of the completion of that training.
Okay. What is the difference between standard and enhanced training? Security awareness training?
What I would say is all departmental staff receive on a regular basis a basic level of security training, the types of document classifications, entry protocols, access. However, in traveling to a high threat environment, as would be the case, for example, in Afghanistan or Iraq, we found that our officers required a much higher level of training in regard to some of the threats that our diplomats face when they are in areas of high conflict. So there is a 5-day training program offered by the Department of National Defense about how civilians operate in militarized environments. That is our hostile environment training course. So that's an example of the type of enhanced training we're offering for people that are exposed to those types of threats.
So there isn't a progression of training with regards to, I guess, the increasing threat in the environment, like more on an emergency basis as opposed to, just 5 days of training here, trying to deal with whatever emergency or threat in the immediate environment?
What I'd say is that on an annual basis, we review the security postures and the evolving threats in our missions abroad, and we adjust the course offerings. There are quite a number of courses of gradated importance. Some focus more on information security and environments where espionage could be a problem. Some are much more focused, as I mentioned, on combat risk, and others are focused on personal security. So high crime environments are actually much more prevalent than the militarized ones that I was speaking of. So there actually are a very wide range of missions. I would say more than almost 3/4 of our missions abroad require some form of enhanced training above the normal security baseline, and that's looked at on a regular basis to make sure that it's adequate to the needs on the ground. In addition, when staff are deployed to missions, they receive a very detailed local security briefing on the threats specific to their mission environment. And also in the outlying regions, our staff don't just work at embassies, but they also travel throughout countries working on humanitarian or other projects, for example. And it's very important that they understand the risks not just at the mission, but also out in the wider country.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yip. I'm just being told that the House will open and the bells will start and there will be a vote that will disrupt us today. But we're here in the same building where the vote will take place. So with everyone's permission, we'll go a little bit in, but I'll still give at least 10 minutes to get up there and take our places.
Last time I remember you gave 2 minutes and you were late.
I was late. Okay. Well, we'll try to speed it up again. I'm probably the slowest to get up there than any of you. So we'll now move to Mr. Christofferson, please.
Great. Thanks, Chair. Just an observation. One of the challenges of dealing with security issues in a democracy is that accountability and transparency don't necessarily go hand in hand with security and preparation. And I just want to say that I think we've done a pretty good job, all of us concerned, you representing the department, the Auditor General's office, the committee itself, the governance by the chair. I think we've done about as good a job as we can on transparency without doing damage to the very entities that we're trying to help. So I make that observation. The second thing I want to do, and this is really important, Mr. Shugart, I really, really like what you said at the beginning of your of a previous answering a previous question. As you know, I am likely the least academic member that has ever sat and likely will ever sit on the Public Accounts Committee. But one of the things that I've learned from my years on this committee is that the planning ahead of time, the processes, the checks and balances, the evaluations, and then when you're done, start all over again and reevaluate and go back and examine. And it's, you know, that the old tradesperson, measure twice, cut once. That is so important. And I think given your broad experience and recognizing that this is an area where the government has not been as effective and the Auditor General's office has been pounding it and pounding it and pounding it, certainly to the point where I get it. You know, as I said, I'm the one that understands how those things are. My knowledge base on that is the least. But I'm so glad to hear you say that because my experience tells me that that's where it is. That and the other part of what we do, which is the follow-up to make sure that you honor the commitments that you make. Those two things really make a huge difference. So I just wanted to emphasize that. I have one more question. As Ms. Yip has already brought forward, 41% of the staff had not completed the mandatory personal security seminar, and 35% of staff had not completed the mandatory hazardous environment training course. Now, when we're dealing with security and mandatory, that seems pretty important to most people. When did Global Affairs decide that they can create their own definition of mandatory? And where else in your organization is mandatory not being treated as mandatory? Or do we need a new word? Because my understanding is mandatory means must do. You didn't do it. And even in your response where you said you're going to start doing it, playing with your tenses, mandatory training for staff being posted abroad, especially to designated high and critical threat missions, is a key element of Global Affairs pre-posting practices, but you didn't seem to believe that before you were held to account by the Auditor General report. So what's the deal with mandatory? When did mandatory in Global Affairs as it relates to security become not mandatory?
Mr. Shugart.
Very simply, it always was mandatory, and not living up to that was a failing. And we now have, as Heather indicated, we have increased by 40% in this year alone the offerings of that one particular enhanced training program. But more importantly, we have put in place the tracking system so that we will be able to follow, and any slippage in our performance on that mandatory standard will be very obvious to managers, and it will be much more rapidly corrected, and we will be able to stick to that commitment. We did not have in place that kind of tracking before. And so to find out the degree of gap, of slippage, the audit staff had to go back and examine the records. We now have in place a tracking system that will tell us real time what our performance is.
I appreciate that. That's good news. Can you give me assurances, though, that nowhere else as it deals with security and mandatory in your organization is mandatory being treated so haphazardly and so unimportant? Can you give us that assurance now?
We will have that conversation to add suspenders to the belt, Chair, but I believe that as a result of the approach that we have taken in the last couple of years to our management of security, we can give you that assurance. But we will, in one of our regular and frequent meetings, we will have that discussion, and if I'm wrong, we will readily correct it.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Christofferson. Mr. Arsenault, vous avez 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to piggyback on the Q&A with Mr. Sugar, along with what my colleague, Mr. Christofferson. The question that I'm dying to ask, and I practiced law for quite some time before being elected, our fellows that we send on missions abroad, or the people that we hire over there, our subcontractors, do we tell them specifically that they are going to be heading into missions where security standards are not up to date or not finalized? Are they aware when they go to a diplomatic mission abroad that not all of the security measures are in place?
Ou à point, je devrais dire.
Ouais,
Or up to date, I should say. I would ask Heather to provide some details. However, this is an issue of transparency, if I'm understanding you correctly. What I mean, I don't have a lot of time. If I'm hired to work in a mission abroad somewhere, and I take this 5-day course to get ready to deal with emergencies, am I told that the infrastructure that I'm going to be working in doesn't meet basic security standards or is behind in that matter? Do we advise employees? Yes or no is enough as an answer.
That on arrival at mission, all of our staff are fully briefed on the situation, the measures that are in place, and that includes not just the physical security measures that they're aware of, gates, access, but also the operational security, which can supplement and in some cases compensate for physical security that needs to be enhanced. That includes movement protocols, go/no-go areas in their mission locale, the type of escorts, local guard service required for moving outside the mission environment, radio protocols, communications, check-ins, all these types of things.
Mais en fait, les défaillances relevées par le...
But the issues raised by the Auditor General's office were revealed, maybe not in detail like this, but we tell staff you're going to work abroad, and do we tell them at the beginning that all the security standards are up to date? We tell them this? They're aware?
Of the operational and physical security measures that are in place around their mission and the need to respect them in order to ensure the safety of not just...
Non, c'est pas ça que je vous ai demandé.
No, that's not what I asked. What I'm asking is, do they know that there are security measures that are lacking, that there's infrastructure lacking? Do we tell them that?
Je dirais en général que nos collègues...
I would say that in general, our colleagues are well informed of the situation. For example, we're not there yet, but we do have projects, and this information is available. You're asking a very specific question, and we're going to have to go back and check. Yes, thank you. Maybe you can send it back to the committee. Second question, I don't have a lot of time. 2 minutes. I'll take 3. Mr. Sugar, thank you for your transparency and for answering the question, which was becoming evident, the lack of planning when we set up missions abroad. There you have it. That's what I understood in one word. I know that we don't set up missions abroad every single week, but This isn't new. It seems to be happening from government to government. At least that's what I've understood since 2011. Do you have an example where planning was done perfectly to set up a new mission? A mission that we're... Are we setting up a new mission soon? And has its planning been done correctly?
Récemment, on a ouvert des missions.
Recently, we opened up new missions in Brussels. That was a great success for us. It only took us a year and a half. And it was a new chancellery. We also opened a new one in New York. It was on time and on budget. Recently, we're seeing a lot of success in this area. Sorry? Brussels and the United States, they could be issues that, they could be countries that are a little more difficult, but are there missions that have opened up in countries that are a little more contentious? It's hard to answer that question because now we're wrapping up all the missions or projects that we had in our system. However, we had a lot of success in countries like Afghanistan and other hotter countries, if you will. Recently, however, I think there's a lot of examples like that. Thank you very much.
And without trying to interpret what all the Auditor General said, I think in some of those places listed on the front page here, Burkina Faso, Afghanistan, Egypt, those are all recognized as, we better have security here, but sometimes it's those countries around that the attack, as we found out, as the Americans found out, Benghazi and others, that it can happen anywhere, and so that's good. I have one more question, Mr. Zimmer, and then I'll just tell the committee we do have a very short issue with our public accounts budget for this travel through the summer on our conference with the provinces that we want to deal with, so we can get the budget and go to liaison. Mr. Zimmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as chair of our ethics committee, I think one thing we've studied exhaustively is how groups can organize quickly around the world now, around platforms, or on platforms like Facebook, etc. And I guess what my concern is you survive this, and I respect you, sir, as a servant of the public. But I'll read 418, and this is where all this comes down to. This finding matters because physical security vulnerabilities must be resolved in a timely manner for the effective protection of staff and assets at mission abroad. And you sit here and you survive this committee meeting and you go away to your normal life and you don't come back here maybe for another 4 years, I don't know. But we have a fence that hasn't been fixed for 8 years. Who do you answer to? Like, I understand I've been in bosses' offices before answering for something that I haven't done properly, and it's been rare, but it's happened. But I guess what's your commitment to seeing that fixed? Because here we see this. You're going to be here maybe next year, maybe the next year again, and it's still not fixed for the next 20 years. At what point do you actually get it done, and answer what this audit report is challenging you to do? What's your response back about, okay, I've just been taken to the cleaners here, and I'm going to make sure this problem is resolved? When is that going to happen?
Well, I can answer. I think the member's question is one of a more general one. If it's about the specific fence, I'll ask Dan to handle that. But I guess I would say I don't regard coming to this committee and the time we spend, and I think the chair will back me up on this, as just surviving and then going back to my ordinary life. In fact, my ordinary life is about the implementation of the funding that we received for these purposes, guided by the Auditor General report and by our own internal audit. The Treasury Board holds us accountable for those funds.
And I know you're short of time, Chair. But what you're starting to talk about is generalities. I'm asking for specific, what are you going to do as a department to say, we're going to go back and look at all the Auditor General's recommendations, and we're going to get them done, and our target is in the next 3 months to pull this off.
Zimmer, let me jump in here. They have already given us an action plan. So the action plan we follow up on, but I think the question is still good. I mean, you've given an action plan. In your opinion, this action plan is on time? You're going to be able to fulfill what you've committed in this, correct?
Absolutely. We are on track with every one of those. And frequently the OAG does follow-up audits, and we do follow-up audits on our internal audits.
Well, thank you. And it's a good question, Mr. Zimmer. It's a good question. I think for those maybe watching there, that can be a question that a lot of members are concerned about, because we see this time and time again where departments commit to something and then don't do it. And let me say that in this Public Accounts Committee, we've now taken on a follow-up so that deputy ministers, and Mr. Shugart is not one of them, but deputy ministers would not come in and have the one and done, do the one meeting and we're done for another year. We follow up on these with our analysts, and if they are not getting done, and I've already been told by our analyst at this meeting that he is confident that the timelines in the action plan can be met and are reasonable. But if they're not done, then we invite departments back. And I know Mr. Shugart knows that the second time on one issue is not a good, it's not a good meeting typically. So thank you for that question. It gives us the opportunity to explain it a little bit. And I want to thank our guests for their testimony today, and again for the Auditor General's good work on this, and for the department being here and being accountable. We're going to suspend this meeting. I'm going to ask those to leave fairly quickly so we can have an in-camera committee business where we have 2 items that we want to quickly discuss. We're suspended.